Going on, Jerome's. Your Minnesota Vikings are indeed 9-2, looking to move to 10-2 on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals, the Doyle Brunson. Woo! And they're in the thick THICC of the NFC playoff hunt. Maybe NFC North if the Lions can get theirs one freaking time. Anyways, but the problem with success is your coaching staff and sometimes your personnel staff sometimes gets rated by other teams because they want some of the secret sauce. And Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell, who deserves an extension, by the way. I know that ownership said not during the season. It's going to cost you. The price of the Kevin O'Connell brick is going up. Same thing with Kwesi. But that's what happens, man. The DJ Khaled suffering from success is that once you start winning, your coaches are going to be in demand. And the thing I love about Kevin O'Connell, he's not shy about that. Like, he wants his coaches to move up in the world. He wants them and their families to get more cash, get better jobs, and whatnot. And I love the upward mobility that O'Connell has on his staff. Plus, it's small things. We've talked about this before. It's awesome that all three of his coordinators, Flores, Wes, and Coach Hatt, have their own pressers on Tuesdays, where a lot of teams don't have that, where assistants don't talk to the media, because guess what? Next job, head coach, that's a big part of the job, communicating with the media, communicating with the fans. I love that O'Connell's having them get the reps in, or maybe he's just sick of talking. I don't know. One of the two things, right? But long story longer, the Vikings coaching staff has a lot of rising stars and a lot of guys that are going to branch out and be part of the Kevin O'Connell coaching tree. And I don't know, is the O'Connell coaching tree eventually going to be the Bill Walsh coaching tree? It's going to be Sequoia. It's going to be giant. It's going to be Methuselah. I love it, man. So there are some guys that are going to be probably getting promotions and probably moving up and moving on. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So we got a list of some Vikings assistants as well as some personnel guys who could be moving up in the world. So first off, the obvious one is Brian Flores, former head coach of the Dolphins, longtime assistant and DC with the Patriots, and he's turned the Vikings defense into one of the best in the National Football League. Just unlimited pressure, unlimited creativity, and what's been great about this defense is a lot of it is first-year players, right? So a lot of free agents coming on in, and they've gelled extremely quickly. I think a lot of that is high football IQ, high-character guys, and they've really synced up really quick. And that's a huge testament to Brian Flores. Plus, I know that there's drawbacks with Flores. Well, perceived drawbacks, right? You have the ongoing lawsuit against the NFL. You have the whole thing with Tua. But I actually think that he's really grown and shown and learned a lot during his time here. Number one, he's had the humility to be like, okay, just because I've been a head coach in this league doesn't mean that I've created football, right? And he's been great at coordinating the defense, but also he said he's learned a lot from Kevin O'Connell as well, just on the personal side of things, interpersonal relationships with players, especially the quarterback, which is the most important relationship on a football team, head coach and starting QB. And I think that Flores is going to be dynamite. Next head coaching job that he gets, and he'll get it, but he's definitely earned the right to be a little bit choosy as well. And if Flores wants to stick around here and be the highest paid coordinator in NFL history, I'm mad at that as well. Also, what's great about Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings as well is that you're going to attract great talent to be your assistant, because O'Connell, he's not someone who's going to work you to death, although you will get your work done, but you're not going to be grinding away at 4 or 5 a.m. He believes in work-life balance. He believes in family. That's huge with the Vikings. The money's going to be there. The Wolves are very good about compensating his assistants. You got talent on this team all over the place. You have a great culture that everyone talks about. O'Connell is great to work for, and he's a young, brilliant offensive mind. And, well, maybe we're fluffing up a little bit in comparison to what the Bears have dealt with the last couple of years. But also, he's a coach that wants you to move up. He understands that this is a transitory and growing and showing profession, and he doesn't just want a bunch of assistants and toadies and yes men that he can kick around for a number of seasons and never have to worry about leaving. That's not how you attract the top talent. That's not how you keep your players engaged. But yeah, Flores, whenever he gets a head coaching job, he deserves to be choosy. And we said, I think the only jobs that he would leave for would be the Giants and the Patriots. And I don't know if the Giants or if the Patriots job is going to open up. Giants will probably open. And Flores was a finalist for the Giants job in 2022 before he went to Dayball. So We'll see. Keenan McCardle, Vikings wide receiver coach for a couple seasons, and it really speaks to the mettle of McCardle because he was a holdover from the Zimmer regime, and O'Connell it's his prerogative. Like, he could have washed the entire coaching staff out, but he kept McCardle because the receivers went to bat for him. Jefferson, Thielen, Wright, like, they're all like, Coach Keenan, want him here. And you see how Jefferson has developed as a player. You see the respect and reverence and the love that all the receivers have for McCardle. You see the rise of Jordan Addison. You see Naylor's done some good things. So yes, Keenan McCardle, who has interviewed for OC jobs before with the Patriots and the Chargers, like, he deserves to be moving on up in the world. Now, it could be a spot too where, say, Wes Phillips leaves, whether for a upgrade or a lateral move or whatever, and then McCardle becomes the OC, or McCown leaves and McCardle becomes the OC in that spot, or maybe even becomes quarterback coach, which you do see that lateral moves amongst positions at times, even though McCardle, obviously, his forte is wide receivers. But I do think that they would love to keep McCardle in the fold. I think that a move up to OC, if they don't bring back Wes, would make a ton of sense, but we'll see. Because even if he becomes OC, he still likely wouldn't be calling plays here with the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell. So maybe he does find a spot where he's able to call plays. Who knows? Josh McCown is interesting because I think that there's a tailor-made spot for him. Like, if the Patriots fire current OC Alex Van Pelt, and he goes up there and works with his guy Drake May, who he does have connection with. He coached in high school. So that would be A1 hand in glove. That would be a smart move. That would be a great Robert Kraft type move where, all right, you have this great rookie quarterback who's someone from one of the best offenses in the league that could show him the ropes and, keep McCown in the fold. Now, McCown is interesting too, because if I had to pick someone from this staff besides Flores who could potentially get a head coaching job this cycle, it would be Josh McCown. Because you remember, back in the day, he was still a player on the Texans in 2020. They wanted to interview him for the head coaching job in 2021, which ultimately went to David Culley. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like, McCown is a sought-after name. They sort of ignore what happened as quarterbacks coach with the Panthers because that was a disaster from the get-go. It wasn't really his fault. But McCown has done a great job, obviously, with slinging Sam Darnold, the progression of J.J. McCarthy, even though he's been injured. And I think that McCown will get a lot of credit for that, for being the quarterbacks coach. So I think that, some team may shock the world. Like Josh McCown, Josh McCown to the Bears. Didn't he used to play for the Bears? Or is that Luke McCown? Doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think that McCown could surprise people and randomly land a head coaching job, or at least get several head coaching interviews. We'll see. Grant Udinski, assistant quarterbacks coach. Now, he's been in the mix with O'Connell for a while now, and there is reports that the Vikings may have blocked him for interviewing for lateral moves. Now, under the new rules, you can block assistants for moving to other assistant roles, but you can't block a coordinator interviewing for a coordinator, or a coordinator's interviewing for a head coach job. So you can't block a move up. But Udinski, if McCown leaves, he would be one for one replacing him as quarterbacks coach back where he once belonged, and he does deserve a lot of credit for what's happening with Darnold this year. Plus, he's been instrumental working with J.J. McCarthy. Basically, he's been J.J. McCarthy's personal quarterback coach. So, say McCown moves on, and say McCardle is elevated to OC if Phillips leaves, and Udinski steps in as quarterbacks coach, and he's already worked with McCarthy hand in glove, and he's the quarterback in 2025, baby. Still got Stu going. Wes Phillips. So, a lot of people downgrade Wes Phillips because he's not the play caller for the offense, but he still has a huge part in putting together the offensive game plan. It's basically carbon copy of what O'Connell was as the OC with the Rams when he had Sean McVay. But Phillips, beautiful football mind as well, has the bloodlines, with his pops and his grandfather too. And, he's been a major part of why this offense has been great as well. And maybe he'll get some looks as a head coach. Maybe he'll get some looks as a play calling offensive coordinator, and they let Phillips make that move, or if he's out of contract, we'll see. Defensively, so you got Mike Sarava, linebackers coach, inside linebackers coach rather, and Sarava is a guy that Flores talks about a lot. Former college teammates at Boston College, and he is a guy that, say Flores gets a head coaching job, I think that Saravo would be a strong candidate internally for being elevated to DC, or a guy that Flores would take with him. Then also got Saravo getting, deserves a ton of credit for Pace, Cashman, Grugier, Hill working at linebacker this season. Durante Jones, a lot of veterans in that defensive back room. Jones also has a 1 year DC experience back at LSU, and the Vikings lead the league in turnovers. The Vikings are ball hawks on the back end, and he is the passing game coordinator. The Vikings have been elite against the pass this season, so I think that Durante Jones could get some looks as a DC, or like Saravo, like if Flores does leave, he would be a candidate for elevation internally, or following Flores as well. Who knows? And then you got Matt Daniels, special teams coordinator, and it's not the traditional path from special teams coordinator to head coach. It is the John Harbaugh sort of path, although Harbaugh did have 1 season of DB coach experience before he became the Ravens head coach, but he was primarily a special teams coordinator. Now, Daniels, I love Coach Hat. He is a leader. I mean, just watch him as a linebacker for Duke, like getting fired up for Duke football, baby. I'm sure that he loves Daniel Jones in the building as well. But he could go that John Harbaugh type route. I think that he's a great leader of men. I think that the way that he talks about the game, he sees the whole thing, and that's the whole thing about special teams too. You interact with basically the entire roster, right? And you have to be ready for a lot of things that one side of the ball or the other side of the ball doesn't really have to be. So I think that Daniels could, maybe not this cycle, but eventually be a strong candidate for a head coach. Then personnel-wise, the personnel guys are always working behind the scenes. They don't really get the love and attention that you usually would. But Ryan Grigson's an interesting name. So basically, Kwesi's assistant GM, senior VP of player personnel, and Grigson was a GM for the Colts for a bunch of years, traded for Trent Richardson. Ruined Andrew Luck. Not just kidding. But Grigson is a name that could be bandied about for GM jobs as you look at what the Vikings have done personnel-wise, especially in free agency, just identifying studs all over the place, whether it's Darnold, Aaron Jones. You look at Cashman, Grugier, Hill. You look at AVG as well as Grenard, Gilly, Shaq, etc. I mean, that could be valuable. So Grigson could get some looks. And then you got 3 internal guys that, their names have been floated around for potential GM jobs for a while. Ryan Monens, who was considered for an internal elevation before they hired Kwesi, director of player personnel, who's been with the team for 23 seasons. Mike Sholiton, director of college scouting, 21 years with the team. I believe he's been the director of college scouting for 3-4 years, would be 4 next year, something like that, as well as Jamal Stevenson. Jamal's been around the block. He's been in the public eye for a long time now, senior personnel executive, survived a lot of regimes. These guys have 24 years with the team. And I don't know, the thing is, a lot like coaching, sometimes executives, they get comfortable in a spot, right? And they love working in one place. The kids grow here, and they get integrated in the community, and they put down roots, which is fantastic. But there's only 32 GM jobs, right? And at a certain point, do you want it? It reminds me a lot of Mike Munchak. So Munchak was one of the best offensive line coaches in the game, right? And I'm paraphrasing this, but he had a conversation with his wife and is like, hey, I can just stay here and be a great offensive line coach, and we will always have that, and I'll always be employed. Or I could go for a head coaching job, and we could be fired within 2 years, right? And that's basically what happened. Didn't work out for him as a head coach, but he's still a great offensive line coach. And that's exactly what happens, whether it's personnel or coaches, where these guys are experts in their specialty. And do they keep rising up because of ambition, or are they happy with where they're at? Do they realize it's a Peter Principle situation? Are they comfortable? Do they not want the additional scrutiny of being a coordinator or a head coach, or are they happy with being a VP or a personnel executive versus being a GM? Because GMs and coordinators and head coaches, they get all of the blame, right? Very rarely does the director of college scouting or director of player personnel or wide receiver coach get blamed for the team's fortunes or get credit for the wins. So who really knows? But either way, the Vikings, low key, Kwesi and O'Connell have assembled the Avengers. They're kind of good to go here, but that's what happens, man. When you have success, teams want some of the secret sauce, and Teams come for your coaches, so we'll see. Anyways, your thoughts are thoughts. Coaches who could leave the Vikes this offseason, let us know your thoughts, our thoughts, comment section. You guys know what to do. Skol, production value.